Hi everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady, and today I am getting busy doing some seasonal change outs. I'm transitioning my beds from tropical summer to cool season displays filled with beautiful flower bulbs and different vegetables. So stay tuned to see my progress. Behind me I have the Treasure Island sweet potato series, the first edible ornamental varieties. And these have been growing here on the east side of my house, receiving really only 4 to 6 hours of direct sun. I've been so impressed with how well they've performed all summer long, and I'm really excited to see what I harvest from this mass of chartreuse beautiful ground cover. I know I planted these kind of in around the 10th of June, and I can't remember how many plants I put in. I think 6, maybe 8. I'm not sure. And you can see how well they have grown as a ground cover, suppressing all the problem plants. I've not had to weed in here at all. And you know, yeah, animals will munch on them. Like you can see, there's some leaves that have been eaten. But overall, once they're established, animal browse isn't really that big of a problem. And you can see from here, this actually gets a lot of shade. There's a Japanese maple, a Prunus mume here, and then a live oak there, creating a lot of shade in this whole corner. So I didn't really know how this would do with kind of part shade conditions. I usually grow sweet potatoes in full sun, but I'm so impressed. And I hate to rip it out because I think it's so pretty, but it's time, and I have a bunch of bulbs to go in here. Well, a whole wheelbarrow worth of foliage, but only a handful of small tubers. I think that's the consequence for growing sweet potatoes in more shade than sun. But I can't complain. I am over the moon happy with how this border looked all summer long, and I definitely plan to do it again next season. I've been waiting all season to finally make this Hydrangea paniculata sweet summer a standard, meaning growing on one stem. Now I plan to use the old hydrangea flowers for upcoming holiday decoration. My plan today is to simply remove one stalk from both of these plants, and then I can process those flowers off and leave the single stem as the specimen in my garden. It's as simple as just having a sharp pair of loppers, cutting it down. Now I have all of these flowers to be able to use for holiday decorations, and this garden is suddenly a little bit sunnier with a really interesting specimen of Hydrangea paniculata. So some plants to note, obviously the now single stem Hydrangea paniculata. You can still see the flowers that are left. I have a huge pile to be able to use for decorating. Of course, I have the compacta holly hedge back there, which I cut nearly to the ground last spring. That would have been like April 2020. Those are the only plants left from the original install by the builders. And you know, I like a nice hedged, I like a good shrub hedge, and I'd like for those to grow together. They're not bothering me at all. I'm also not ambitious enough to dig them out. That's the main reason they're still there. Now this here, Lindera salicifolia, it might have a different name now, but that's how I learned it. This is a really great plant in that it's tardily deciduous, meaning the foliage will turn beige and persist all winter. So it gives a really interesting kind of view through the winter, especially when light shines through it. So I don't want to do any major pruning to that, because I want that to be one of the focal points. Now in this bed, I haven't used compost in here in quite a few years, and it's super rooty. So when I was trying to dig for sweet potatoes, it's like you can't really dig very deep. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a big layer of soil cube organic compost first thing, and then I'm gonna get started on planting bulbs, and then ultimately I'll fertilize, mulch, and replant for the season. Well, as you can see, I have a wheelbarrow of Soil Cube Black Magic compost, and I'm just going to start loading these wheelbarrows into this bed. Oh, didn't do a very good job getting that in. Oh, golly. And now that I have some compost in, I'm just gonna rake it out gently. I basically want to make sure I have at least an inch covering everything, and that will really help with especially the direct seeding that I plan to do in here. You really want to make sure you've got good contact with soil when you're direct seeding, and that's why top dressing with a well-drained compost mix like Soil Cube is so important. And concentrate it out to the edge, and even over the perennials that are in here. That won't hurt them at all. That'll actually just sort of give them some additional nutrients to be able to come back and grow even stronger next year. So you can see I need to bring probably at least 3 more wheelbarrow loads just to cover this whole bed. And then I'll be ready to start planting, which will first be bulbs and then direct seeding. Okay everybody, the bed is ready, and the next step will be planting bulbs. And I have a great collection here from flowerbulbs.com. It includes dwarf daffodils, grape hyacinths, alliums, and crocuses. So I'm gonna get busy now with my handy drill auger and get these bulbs planted. Now that the bulbs are planted, it's time for me to do some direct seeding, fertilizing, and then mulching. Now, I have 3 specific things that I want to seed. I want to do some cilantro in the middle to back of the border. I want to do poppies at the very back, kind of adjacent to that compacta holly hedge. And then along the front, I am planning on doing this lettuce mix, this wildfire lettuce mix. And I'm actually going to do that direct seeded all the way along the edge so that it's like has great continuity, and it's also really easy for harvesting. Now, I've already planted the garlic edge, so that will act as my protector for planting this lettuce right here along the border, because let's face it, rabbits and deer love lettuce just as much as people do. But the garlic is a really helpful thing to have planted as a very front edge to help prevent those animals. So the only thing in here that can't be covered are the poppies. Remember, poppies need light to germinate. I'm still like 3 weeks earlier than normal, but this year I'm really trying to set out to see, you know, what the time range for direct seeding poppies is. And so what I'm basically going to do, I'm going to sow all of these other things that can be covered with a light layer of mulch. And then, as I always preach, the very last thing I do in this bed is scatter some of these poppy seeds. And this is an area that doesn't really get full sun, so I've got to like put my expectations a little bit lower. Poppies will grow here, but they tend to be a lot smaller than in other parts of my garden that are brighter exposure. Nevertheless, I want to give it a try. I think this would be really pretty with, you know, garlic, lettuce, all those bulbs that I just planted, and then cilantro and poppies kind of going up through the bed. So let me show you my process. Over the years, I've learned that it's always easier to just broadcast fertilizer through the whole thing instead of trying to do hand by hand at each plant. And I always use plant tone at this time of year. Basically, you're not going to burn anything. Just going to give all the plants the nutrients they need to get through the winter season. You can use a synthetic like a 10-10-10 in the spring, but I don't recommend using those kinds of fertilizers at this time of year just because it gives your plants too much charge. And there's really no benefit to having your plants grow lots of tender growth at this time of year when frost is just like a few weeks away. So you can see I just do handfuls of plant tone, scattering it out, essentially top dressing everything. Now, scattering cilantro seed is super easy. Literally just take a handful. Remember, cilantro will grow about 3 foot tall, so you don't necessarily want it right out front. Another benefit of cilantro is that it will grow in shadier areas. So half of this bed is really dense shade. I think one of the few plants that will grow both in full sun and part shade is cilantro. Now you can see this lettuce mix. You can see by the seeds that it's 2 different colors. That indicates green and red. And I am literally just going to kind of tap it right along this edge, in and outside of the garlic border. And then the final step is just to sort of come through and agitate it with your hand. That way you know that the seed has good contact with soil. Once I get all of this lettuce seed put in, I will then mulch this bed up to 3/4 of the way just behind those hydrangeas, and then I will get the poppy seeds sown and it'll be finished. Remember, my trick for mulch: work smart, not hard. Bring your mulch trailer right to where you're working, and then you don't ever have to load it into a wheelbarrow and do twice the amount of labor. It's an important design strategy. If you're in the situation where you're designing a new landscape, make sure you make all of your openings wide enough for equipment. Trust me, you'll thank me later. All right, mission accomplished. I think the bed looks neat and tidy. I have plenty of things that are gonna grow up through the mulch layer. Then ultimately in the spring, all those flower bulbs will bloom. So I don't need to get ahead of myself and then start planting more, because that's what I'm classic for, overplanting, and I'm gonna resist the urge. Now, my last step, as always, is to sow the poppy seeds. And sowing the poppy seeds, it's a little anticlimactic, to be honest, because literally all you do is throw them and then you walk away. And that's exactly what is going to be done now. Now, I'm actually going to sow these poppies along the front and back side of that compacta holly hedge. I had some self-sow last year on the back side and they did really well. But now I'm going to get busy sowing a few poppy seeds so that this bed can be off of my to-do list. Well, I look forward to sharing updates from this bed and all of my garden spaces in my weekly garden tours, which I try to post on Sundays. And if you found this video to be helpful, please give me a like. Be sure to share it with some friends. And I'm Bree the Plant Lady. Thanks so much for watching.